Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration.
Every moment in your life is filled with all the opportunities that life has to offer.
My name is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman.
You see, life is a canvas, and you decide to color. What colors will you choose for your life today?
Listen to the words of the song. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be.
Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. This is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman and I'm your host of tonight's show. I want to thank you all for tuning in to tonight's show where we're going to talk about tapping into your greatness, part 2. Now in part 1, for those of you who watched last month, we talked about a simple formula. Thoughts plus feelings plus action equals manifestation. Now I know that a lot of you have heard that all it takes is thoughts and feelings, but I'm here to tell you that if you don't move it into action, nothing happens. We also talked what's keeping you in place. What's keeping you where you are? In other words, what is the reason for your failure to launch? We talked about fear. We talked about relationships and picking the right relationships. We talked about allowing yourselves to dream. And we're going to finish that conversation today because it's such an exciting topic. We ran out of time. Joining me are 3 of my favorite people again. And I want to thank them for taking time out of their busy schedule. Come on, we're going to start on the end, and I'm going to introduce you again, or should I say reintroduce you to Reverend Wendell Tate.
Pleasure to be here, Stephanie.
Fantastic. Tell the audience a little bit about you, because it's been a minute since you've been on the show with us.
Yes, it has. I've moved with my spiritual center at church. We're now at 1335 East Sibley Boulevard in Dalton, and we meet there at the Best Motel and Suites every Sunday from 10 to 11:30, having a marvelous time with the little simple word, rise, recognizing the infinite spirit of everyone, which is the spirit of greatness. So we invite everyone to come and join us there, and I'm happy to be here to share some things.
Thank you. And new to my little circle of friends is Nina Christmas. Now, she's got an interesting story. She is a hair designer and a psychologist. How about that? Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, you know what? I started off as a business major in college. Before that, I was licensed as a cosmetologist. And growing into my business, I found that psychology fit a little better for me. Some nudging pushed me into that direction. So I use that to enhance cosmetology education. And it all works out for conversation.
Oh, fantastic. And the next one is Stanley Robinson. Stanley has introduced me to some of the most interesting books I've ever read in my whole life. We have just an absolute ball together. He alone is going to get everybody back in America reading. I'm going to help all I can too. So he is the producer of The Ink Spot, which is both on television and on the radio. Hi, Stanley.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Stanley's like my resident smart person too, right?
That's good.
I did this the last time and I probably embarrassed him, but he actually has a JD and a DBA, which is a Doctor's in Business Administration. I am just so excited to know you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I've assembled a few people here so we could finish talking about tapping into your greatness. Now this is a subject, I said finish, but I want you to know at home that you're always going to be tapping into your greatness. That's a process that is never finished. So I want you to enjoy the journey. Because what your greatness may be today, I promise you that once you step into that, other things will nudge you and push you along, and you'll find something else to fall in love with. So what are some of the barriers that we talked about for stepping into your greatness? And if you guys are anything like you've probably experienced some of those barriers yourself since the last show. Because there's always something. There's always something to learn about yourself. There's always something to overcome.
Well, I think last time we said that one of the barriers were toxic people in your life. Those are people that will be negative, people that will say you cannot do it. You know, whenever you come up with an idea. I think this may be part of human nature. I'm not 100% sure. But it seems that when you come up with an idea, people will, the first thought all the time, it seems, is that people will have a tendency to be negative on that and say, you cannot do that. And they'll come up with good reasons as to why you can't do it.
Now, when they come up with these good reasons, and you're right, they do come up with really good reasons, What do you do with that? How do you process that information?
Yeah, well, what I do, if people come up with good reasons, I try to listen, and I think that's really, in terms of successful, you know, living your greatness, one of the things that we have to do, that we must do, is listen. And I think that's what, if we listen a little bit more, I think we're going to do a lot better in life. So what I like to do is, if people are talking to me and let's say the person is negative, then I will listen to the person. However, I won't necessarily react to what the person said. I think that when people talk, what we need to do is, everything that somebody says to us is valid. Now, it's what you do with that information that's going to make the difference. And, you know, you kind of filter it out. Some things you take, you act on, and some things you don't. Whenever I get the negativity, I just kind of blow it off. I'll say, yeah, okay, thank you for that, and keep going.
Now, I read a quote by Winston Churchill that said that everyone's opinion deserves at least some respect because they put as much work and thought into formulating their opinion as you did into your opinion. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to act on it, but at least have some respect for it. And I find that, we'll call those devil advocates. I find that they have a very useful role, as Stanley said. Sometimes they point out pitfalls that you didn't think about.
Sure do. Yeah,
sometimes they help you sharpen your plan. And then sometimes they just get you going. They just kick you off of your seat. So
Yeah,
get
and that's a good point, because for me, one of the things that really do get me going is negativity. When somebody tells me I cannot do something, that's when I'm going to go do everything within my humanly power to make that thing happen.
I think that's.
Are you a Leo by chance?
No.
Okay.
Hey, that's that
Stand
fire.
Leo, huh?
Winston Churchill, however, is a Sagittarius, like myself. You know, I try to bring in and I value everything that has to say, but I also recognize those small foxes that are at the bottom of those grapevines trying to bring you all the way down. I've found the need to kind of put some of those toxic people on mute.
Okay.
But not necessarily kick them out of my life plan, because like you say, they can sharpen you. You know?
They can be highly motivational. To me, I love them because it's a two-step thing. You hear them, you must listen, because listening to me is respect for another human being. But after you listen to them, or while you're listening to them, you must develop the ability to cipher. That's all. To just decide what's important, what's not important, and they don't know that. They don't know what's going on in your head. That's an inside job. That's what you do for yourself while constantly respecting them. Because half of what I hear from some people, I simply zap it out while I'm listening, and at the same time say two little words: I understand. And I do, from my own perspective. You know, so I'm being true to them and true to me. I keep what is useful, I let go what is not.
Right.
But now, toxic means that they're always negative, okay? We're not talking about the occasional negative
You mean real
person.
poisonous folks.
We mean poisonous people, right? Now, and we are not saying, for those people who are listening, that people are bad. What we're saying is that sometimes we develop habits,
yes, we do,
and beliefs that will cause us to do things that are poisonous. Okay?
Yeah.
So what do you do about those poisonous people? How do you get them out of the way?
Well, one thing I've found is that those who assume that, you know, everything will tumble, everything might not work, I don't know if they've accepted the fact that the universe can work for you, and that what you put out can work for you. I've never done anything for myself. I recognize that I have some help from higher power.
Absolutely.
You know? There are some who don't know that, and they think, oh, wow, all that you did for yourself? No, I don't know where it came from. It's actually a blessing. You know, so they can't imagine how you came up with this because they don't know really how to pluck it. And I think that's your whole point of having us here this evening. We got to help them figure out how to pluck it out of the universe.
Well, you know, when it comes to those toxic people, I think last time I mentioned this to you, in general, I think the word excuse is a bad word. However, in this instance, when you're talking about toxic people, one of the things that I do, and again, I mentioned this last time, is I will make any excuse in the world to get away from those people. Because, I mean, it is a problem. It's a serious problem when you have that type of person in your life. And as you said, you're not talking about the person that's occasionally giving you an opinion that you may not agree with, or even something negative or bad. We're talking about somebody that's bringing you down. And when I have somebody around me that's like that, I want to get away from that person as quickly as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, you know, gradually move away from that individual, try to hang around and associate with that person as less as possible. Now, sometimes that may be a little tricky, especially if it's a family member or a close relative.
And you're forced to be with them all the time.
Well, that's when you come up with the excuse.
Okay.
That's when the excuse. I'm not coming. If it's somebody that's not that close to you, then it's really not, it's usually not a problem.
That's right.
It's the close ones.
You can put distance between you. It's the close people.
The
people who are in your space every day, and they can be family members. They can be children. They can be spouses. They can be sisters,
teachers, even.
Teachers,
Right. Except I would just add that if the person is a children, you should probably try to hold on to them.
Okay.
Other than that, it's fair game.
Hold on to the children. That's right. If it's a child, hold on to the child. Right.
And actually, when it comes to children, that is, I mean, I say that as a joke, but that is real. If you have a child, because people do have children that are extremely negative, opinionated, especially when that child starts to reach a certain age, and probably right around the teenage years, 17, 18 years old, 19 years old. That can be a real big problem, but you've got to figure out how to work through it. I'm not sure, but it seems that when it's two women, so it's a mother and a daughter, seems like it really becomes an issue at times. But you have to keep working through it. You have to figure out what to do. What I like to do is there's always something good about that individual.
Always,
Now, when it's not a family member, sometimes it may be difficult to spot that thing that's good. But when it's your kid, you generally know, you can see. So no matter how bad the kid is, no matter how many things the kid will do that's negative, you can always spot that thing that's good about your own kid. And I think that's the thing that you can do for a family member or a child, is try to encourage that person to do those things, to follow those things that are good and that are positive, that kid can do, that kid do well. Whatever the kid is good at, that's the thing to focus on.
Well, I do want to make a point that I think that when a person is acutely negative, they not only spew it out in what they say, but their very energy, causes atmosphere to be negative. So it's not just what's being said. You actually walking into a cloud, a sort of mist of negativity. And if you're around people like that all the time, it's just not a good thing, because you literally breathe it in. I mean, I honestly believe that. That's very bad.
Yeah, if you're around a person like that all the time, then that can wear off on you. And that can actually bring you down.
Gets into your psyche, if you don't have some way of blocking that out. And I think it's a key word, transmute. We must all have the ability to take any kind of energy, be it positive or negative, and switch it, turn it back the other way. And it's all about talking to yourself while they're talking to you.
Right.
Talking to yourself while they're talking to you. And there's a transmutation going back, neutralizes the energy, and then you can send it back to whatever place it is that can make it positive with roses on it, and then let it float back with a different fragrance in the atmosphere in which you find it. It's a technique, and you use it inwardly and make it happen.
All right, I like that.
I do too. As a matter of fact, I didn't realize it was a technique. I just usually tell myself,
You don't call it a technique.
I don't call it a technique. Good. It's a technique.
It's natural for you.
Well, I just remind myself, this is my idea. This idea was given to me. This is what is true in my soul to do.
That's right.
And there's no way anyone outside of me can understand that. They can never glimpse fully the idea or the thing that was given to me. And I just remind myself is that they just haven't seen the full picture. That they just don't know. They just don't. I can do this.
But isn't that to thine own self be true? That's the bottom line to me. If I'm true
and when you're talking about goals, you also have to be careful not to share your goals too soon. one of the things that Zig Ziglar, the motivational speaker, said is that there's two kinds of goals. There's a goal called give up goals, and then there's those go up goals. And he says that if you are working on a give up goal, like I want to give up smoking, I want to give up eating too much, I want to give up gambling, share that with everybody.
Right.
Because those people will help you, because they're going to remind you, especially those negative people.
Why you
we're talking
eating
about.
that?
They're going to remind you, oh, so you're smoking again, right? But share that with everybody, those give up goals. But if it's a go up goal, in other words, a goal where you are trying to improve, trying to make another step, make another move, do something, get yourself to a higher plane.
Right.
Those goals you want to share a little bit more sparingly, especially with those people that you know are toxic individuals. You want to withhold that as long as you possibly can.
Now, Stanley talked a little bit the last time about when we were talking about when people tell you you can't do something or there's a roadblock, is that one of his techniques is to just do it. He gets doing it. And I have found that when it comes to the go up goals, I am just enthralled in doing it. So I forget to talk about it.
Right.
Your emotion.
I'm in motion, because it requires a lot of motion.
You're not
to
analyzing
get from here to where you
overanalyzing.
have to go. And you're jumping hurdles, and you're learning new information, and you're having to discard other information, and I'm just doing. So
And that's good. And that's for people who get things, and that's true. I'm afraid, though, that a lot of people don't get things done because they don't do as you suggest, and that is move. And that's really the key, is to move. Because I know people right now, and I'm sure all of you guys are in the same boat. We know people that we talked to, say, last year, 5 years ago, who said, I want to do X. I want to write a book. I want to go to law school. I want to do whatever the thing that they want to do. And they told you this 5 years ago. They told you this 4 years ago.
And you know what
3 years
happened?
ago.
3 years ago, they ran into a toxic individual, and they might have been called ignorant for wanting to do something that has never been done, or they might have been put in a place of shame, and they don't know how to get out of it. You know.
So how do we help them get out of it? We have people listening right now who decided 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago that they were going to do something. Now, I have with my friends is that you're only allowed to have that same problem for a year. After that, you got to get a new problem.
You got to move on.
You got to move on. Okay, I'm sorry. You have to move on. We are giving up that problem because at some point you're enjoying where you are. But how do we get them out of that? What are some of the steps that you use to just get busy?
My major steps is to find a mentor. I've met a lot of people who are talkers, and I've met some doers. Surrounded myself with doers, people who I can see myself in 3 years. Hey, I like the way she's making those things move, or he handles his business. I'm gonna stay close to those people.
Okay.
You know, I like good examples.
And also make them turn introspective and begin to interrogate them, in my opinion. Ask them, how far along have you come with this? And when did you start? And how far have you gone? And if you're as far as you need to be, why not? Then the script is flipped, and that person must begin to think about himself. Because I do believe that most toxic people do not think about themselves. They just allow whatever's in them to come out of them, and then it contaminates everybody around them. If you flip that script and make them start talking about themselves, that's when they find out about themselves, and then they'll cease and desist from pushing it on you because the load is on them.
And the focus is changed.
The focus is changed. And it works for me when I do that.
Yeah, and I think that people, if you're talking about sharing information with people to help them to move into another point, to do something, one of the things that they can do, and I like what Nina says, is to get a mentor. Now, I have a lot of mentors. I have people are my mentors, don't even know it. Zig Ziglar, for example.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes.
Yeah, because, you know, what I like to do is I like to read, I listen to tapes. And again, the reason why I say Zig Ziglar, and there's other people, but the reason why I mention Zig Ziglar a lot is because for years, I listened to tapes, now, you know, CDs, of course, but Zig Ziglar, he puts out these CDs, and he does a lot of motivational speaking, things like that. And one of the things that he said is he came up with this term, Automobile University. And Automobile University is a situation where he said that most of us spend a huge amount of time in our cars. We're driving, you know, whether you're going to work, commuting, wherever you travel to. And he said that the amount of time that we spend in our cars, if you are within a 3-year span, you could have gained the equivalent of a 2-year college, 2 years of college within a 3-year time period based on the time that we spend.
From listening.
So what he says is whenever you're in your car, make that productive. Make that time productive. Obviously, you can't read in your car. You shouldn't be texting. But you can put in those tapes. So instead of listening to the radio, you know, and jamming, maybe listening to the news, listening to listening to the, talk radio, putting in those motivational tapes, putting in tape. How do you become a salesman? If you want to go to school and you want to write a book, or if you want to do whatever it is, find something related to that thing, put it in. So now you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And I think that's an excellent suggestion as far as helping people to, you know, move a little forward to the next step. And the reason why I think that's so important is because if we are going to do things, we've got to acquire knowledge.
To do so.
Acquire the knowledge.
You can dream.
Yeah, you mentioned Zig Ziglar as your mentor. One of the things I do too. I love Zig, and Brian Tracy is one of my other favorites. But one of the things that I struggled with for a long time was mentors, because I just couldn't seem to find mentors, and then I like sponge up all the information, so I probably wear them out. You know, you need a lot of sleep to deal with me. You do. So I started though. I made a list of people I admired. So if you're at home, make a list of people you admire. And it doesn't have to be people you admire a whole lot or a little bit. Just a list of people you admire. Don't have any rules with that list, because if you have rules on the list, you will never make the list. Just people you admire. And then I started reading books that they've written, and then reading their biographies and autobiographies to learn about the people. And all of a sudden, now you're putting their in a car and you're listening to it. So now you have mentors, and you have a lot of mentors. And you don't even realize.
And don't have to meet them personally.
And you don't have to meet them personally. And you can do that professionally. You can do it spiritually, because I have my own little spiritual council, and I've got my own mentor group of people, and I listen to things that they do and say, and follow what they say. And a lot of the advice is just right on.
And it works for your life.
And how about those who have overcome adversity? I think that's extremely good, to begin to share with them people who had problems and how they overcame the problems, the energy they had, the difficulty it was involved in it, and then they begin to believe, I too can do the same. People oftentimes feel alone in their problem. They really do. They're never alone. There are a multitude of others who feel the same way, have gone through problems deeper and greater and more horrific, and once you bring out some success story, even if it's only your own, it becomes a motivating factor in their lives.
Making yourself a part of the experiment.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And I said this before too, we have got to get away from the concept that life is supposed to be easy.
Or hard.
Okay, we need to understand that we are here to learn stuff.
And you have to do some work.
We have to be disciplined, and we've got work to do. So stop expecting it to be like problem-free. The fact that you're trying new things that you have never tried before indicates that you're going to run into some rough spots. Just enjoy the rough spots.
It's about lifting weights. You know, there's no such thing as a gain in lifting weights without certain pain in lifting weights. I've never, and sometimes it hurts so much, you almost want to stop doing it, but that's what's building the mass. And that's also what's building the success in the adversities that you run into.
We've got a caller on the line. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Hi, you have a question?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
We're wonderful. You have a question for the panel?
Yeah, I do.
We're having some technical difficulty. Thank you very much.
You know, I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, and that is you were given your ideas, things you could do, and you said read a book about X. Well, I want to step back for a minute. First of all, you're presupposing that people read.
Okay, you're right. I'm presupposing that you read. Okay,
Yeah,
let's talk about reading.
That's right.
That's right.
Because one of the things that people can do to help them move forward in life is to read, and that's what we have to do. But we've really got to push ourselves. The average person, and again, I want to go back to something Zig Ziglar said. I would say that this is the last time I'm going to reference Zig Ziglar, but I probably would be lying.
Bring him up as many times as you need to.
Another thing that Zig Ziglar said is that the average person reads about 1 book per year.
Yeah.
But the most successful people read 2 books every month. So he said astronauts on the moon were reading books. So, if people don't read, then what is happening? If the most successful people are reading two books every month, but the average person is reading 1 book, is there a connection between success and reading? And that's one of the issues. As a matter of fact, my dissertation is on the connection between reading and success. And if people do want to be successful, then I submit that they should read. And I think that that's one of the things that you should put at the top of your list.
Yeah.
And speaking of list, I think another thing that people need to do if they want to be successful is to start having goals. Now, a lot of people don't believe in goals. I've had conversation with people who felt like that's something foreign. That's not a good thing to do. It's not real. But if you have goals, then you can meet those goals. If you don't, it's been said that if you plan to if you don't plan, then you plan to fail.
Right.
And I buy into that logic in that, because if you're not planning, if you're not having any goals, any objectives on what you need to do,
it's not even thought out if you're not planning it.
Yeah,
really.
and things can happen haphazardly, but what good is that?
Right, and they usually don't happen. They happen just. So on our success bucket list, the first thing we want to put is you've got to read. You've got to read something.
Read more.
And I'm not talking. I'm talking about reading more than the newspaper, more than comic books, and more than that adult stuff. Okay.
Read things of substance.
And the goal is
I want to interject here for just a second in terms of reading. I think, yes, reading things of substance is great. Reading the encyclopedia is wonderful.
No, but read books.
But what I'm saying is, I believe, and I subscribe to the theory, that reading anything is good.
Okay.
If you read the back of a toothpaste tube, it's good.
It's good, okay.
Yes, you should read. Whether if you're reading a newspaper, as a matter of fact, when I was a teenager, when I don't know, 10 years old, 11, 12, 13 years old, I used to read comic books. I had a collection. I had more comic books than anybody that I know, because I used to read comic books all the time. I'd go to the store, get a handful of comic books. If I had a friend who read comic books and he was done, give me your comic books. And that's how I actually started reading. So whether you read a comic, I'll tell you another thing I read, and I love reading this. When I buy music, I don't like bootleg music.
You like to buy the CD and read
the real thing.
I like to read the liner notes.
Yeah, that's right. You read those liner notes.
I love to read the liner notes.
I think the parallel.
Now Stanley has just said we don't read, and he wants us to read even the back of the toothpaste. So I stand corrected. I want everybody to start reading something.
Read everything.
I want you to read every day. In fact, when I was raising my kids, every morning we'd sit down while we were having dinner. They'd have to read something to me because I wanted to be sure that they knew how to read. So start to read something, okay? And then we want you to morph into reading things about the goals, things that you find interesting. Start there. Don't read War and Peace if you're not interested in War and Peace.
Right.
Read something that gets your interest.
But do have a diversity, don't you think?
Right. Oh, yeah. I believe you have to be diverse. I should read something about your goals, something about your career, something fun that your children are reading. If you have children, I do believe you need to read what they're reading too, so that you can have a discussion about things. I think you should read something spiritual. I think you should read something for every facet of your life, something about health, something about food. Yeah, so as you can see, Stanley and I would have you reading all the time, okay? So I think you should read all the time.
Yeah.
Something.
Again, in terms of reading, I think that, you made a suggestion, you referenced the book War and Peace. Fine, great book. I don't have a problem with the book.
It is.
However, as far as I'm concerned, you don't have to read War and Peace.
Right.
You don't have to read anything in particular. Now, there are some books that are going to help you gain knowledge. Some years ago, I was part of a book club. And one of those book club, there was about 5 of us. It was all guys, right? And one of the guys in the book club, he didn't want to read novels. And because he said that, you know, he wanted to read only those things that are going to give him knowledge. It's going to help him learn and to grow. I take issue with that, even though that's what I generally read. But sometimes I will read a novel. The way I see it is that if you pick up a book that is a nonfiction book, and that book is going to cause you to read a few pages and then put it down, never to be seen again, what good is that? But if you're going to pick up a book, even if it's the worst smut in the world, if that book is going to cause you to continue picking up that book and reading,
then go
and
for
reading,
it.
and reading,
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
The only drawback to that, to me, is that if you keep reading smut, you get smuttier. I really do believe you will, because it begins to infect your subconscious. So you need that diversity. You need to reach out and always keep it on a balance. And the reason I said, when I was a kid, I read sci-fi. You know, you were comic, I was sci-fi. Eventually, a lot of those characters really got into my head. These were aliens. And after a certain period of time, something of that really rubbed off on, honest to God. And my dad had to take this collection of 20 sci-fi books and throw them in the trash. I learned a lot from them, but they began to take me over a little bit. So that's why I mentioned the diversity. You must read something other than one thing.
I had the same issue with serial killers too.
Did you?
I did. I had a serial killer issue. I love serial killers.
You don't want to become one,
figured
right?
out I needed to, I started having serial killer thoughts. I gotta leave this alone.
I'm telling you.
For myself, I like to pick up knowledge from whoever I meet. I've been spending a lot of time in Atlanta. I travel with a style team.
Okay.
And my mentor, Nicole Michelle, she's developed a bookmark. It has rules for the stylists, and it's called Stylist 7. One of them, my favorite, is the law of the mind. And she says that you should invest in your mind as much as you can. One of my favorite books, and I don't do it in totality. I keep it by the nightstand and I pick it up when I need it. It's called The Law of Power, and it's by Robert Greene. One of my favorite laws is formlessness. Never really achieve a full shape, I like myself to change a lot, and I like to bring in things from every angle, so that I'm able to give in every angle. And that law it just really suggests to not assume or achieve a shape so that, you really don't know what angle I may be coming from, and I can assume that I'll be getting things from every angle, and I can fit it in and what do you say, transmute,
and be able to morph into whatever is needful and necessary in the moment. And that's what you're saying. It's
Right, and I think what you're saying is a good thing. I like that. I do want to go back to something that Gwendol said a minute ago, and that is in relation to this idea about reading smut.
Yes.
I do want to talk about that for a minute longer.
But you have to know me a little. You have to know my habits a little bit. When I discovered certain authors, Patterson and Cornwell and Devers and some.
Right.
I was reading 10 of those books a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
for years.
that was me.
And after a while, it's like you hear something and you say somebody's in the walls, right? And then my husband said, "No more of that for you." Nobody in the walls. Nobody in the walls. So I'm a little upset. I can be a little upset.
You're not going to fly when you jump off that
building.
building.
That's right. You're not going to fly when you jump off the building.
Splat. Okay.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to reading smut, first thing is we have to define smut. I don't mean us here, but just in general. The first thing is you got to define smut. What exactly is smut?
Is it a pollutant?
Now, I believe that there are very few things that are smut, personally. Now, if you're talking, for me, smut means, and I'm just going to make up something here, but for me, smut is something that just has no probative value and that is, in fact, detrimental to you. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you know, you're reading, say, a porn magazine.
Okay.
Let's say that you consider that as smut, and the reason you consider it as smut is because it could lead into you know, habits. What do you call those kinds of, you know, habits that are very, you know, bad for you.
Detrimental to you.
Yeah. So, but I think there's very few things like that that exist, because even if it's something that is not, say, educational
Or the most wholesome. It
yeah,
could be.
or wholesome, right? Whatever it is, you know, I don't necessarily see a whole lot of things that could be put in the category as smut, and I think that we have to be open-minded. And this goes to your idea of being shapeless. You know, we do have to be open-minded. We have to understand that information that we're reading, information is good. See, I guess I just don't see how information can be bad. You understand what I'm saying? So, you know,
Especially
if
since
you
we're
take
not
that
reading
information-
that much anyway. There could be a lot of stuff that's harmful. We aren't reading any of it.
Yeah. I don't see that as the problem. I don't see the problem as we're reading too much bad stuff.
Okay.
The problem is we're not reading enough in general.
To have a parallel on what is
We're
bad
just
or
not,
what is
so,
good.
so the success bucket list is to start to read more.
Absolutely.
Start right now,
Absolutely.
Tor.
In general.
Right, in general, just read something, okay, every day, and to make goals.
Yes.
And what would be the third thing on our success bucket list?
I think we mentioned a third thing earlier, and that is to, I think earlier in the conversation we were talking about, you know, toxic people and how to, you know, move and get stuff, and we talked about mentors. So I think the third thing is get a mentor.
Get a mentor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Find a way to stay patted.
Right. Get a mentor. And I have discovered, too, that people who are successful in what they do are more than willing to talk to you
And
about
share.
what they did. They will share, because guess what? Nobody's calling them and asking them. They are happy to sit down and talk to you.
They'll tell you everything.
Yeah, that is so true. And I want to comment on that idea of talking to people, but I want to say one more thing about and that is when. You remember I mentioned that I read the jackets, the liner notes in the CD. I'm telling you, people, if you guys read the liner notes in a CD, it's going to be amazing. The music is going to sound better. It's going to be more interesting.
Different.
Yeah, it's going to open up a whole new. That album is going to take on a whole new meaning.
Right.
After you read what happened, what that person went through.
Get a personal account.
Michael Jackson, there was a CD that was released after he died, and I bought the CD, and I was reading the liner notes in the CD. And as I was reading the notes, they had notes, you know, like images of notes that he had written, you know, on a piece of paper, on a hotel napkin, whatever. And, you know, and I'm reading this, and these are things that this guy is saying, you know, to himself, conversations he's having in his head about the music that he's about to make. And reading this, I'm like, oh, that's what that song is about, or that's what that means.
The engagement changes.
Yeah, it's
You
totally
find yourself
different.
in the song.
There was another one, and I'm going to make this quick, but there was another one I was reading by Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye put out an album called Hear My Dear. And most people don't know this album. It's an album after he was divorced from his wife.
Divorced from his wife.
Yeah, she sued him for. She sued him.
Right.
He was broke because he was doing drugs, and then he had to pay her, but he couldn't pay her because he money. So she took him to court. The judge says, you're going to pay her from the royalties from your next album. So he wrote an album.
Here you go, my dear.
Right, he wrote an album to his wife.
For that purpose, yeah.
And the album that he wrote to his wife, he titled it Hear My Dear, but it was sarcastic.
Of course.
But as he went along and he started to develop the music, he really started to get into it, and he's like, wait a minute, you know, this is me. This is representative of me. And he started to write music that he really was feeling at the time. But as you listen to all of the songs are instances, situations that he was dealing with, that he was going through.
Real life
at the
experiences
time.
for him. Yeah.
Right. And when you read the liner notes, it tells you about every single song. So for me, that's one of my favorite albums.
And what I'm catching from this is words can either trap you or set you free. Your lack of them will trap you.
Right.
But if you feel yourself with them all, you can be set free. You'll know how to engage in every angle.
Every situation.
Yeah, it colors your experience. That's what I believe.
Right,
It's the
and
coloration of it.
everyone,
It's amazing.
everyone has gone through things. And
Yeah.
if you take time to listen to their stories, even in the car, or
Yeah,
read about their
that's true.
stories,
That's true.
you can possibly get answers to some of the situations that
That
you're
you're
going
going
through.
through. You're
You
so
get
right,
rid of
Stephanie.
the feeling
You're so
of
right.
being by yourself, because you
Whoa.
are not by yourself.
Gotta
'Cause
mention
someone
it.
else
Very
has
important.
gone through that.
Yeah,
But you've got to
very
read
important.
about it, or you've got to listen to it, or talk about it to a mentor.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, now I want to, so you were talking about mentors before I interrupted you with my liner note story.
That's all right. I love your liner notes.
It was
That's right.
amazing.
But in any case,
Because I read liner notes too. So
so,
there are three of us in the world, because I have a girlfriend who reads liner notes
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
well,
Three
I'll tell you,
Musketeers.
it's going to change the texture of the music. The music is going to take on a whole new meaning when you know what that music is about, what that person, because every time somebody writes a song, they're telling a story.
Right.
Yeah.
But in any case, I digress. All right. So, in terms of your conversation about talking to mentors, I think you're exactly right. Most people who you talk to want to share their stories. They want to tell you. If you ever want to start a conversation, I listen to, and I was telling you guys, I listen to tapes, CDs all the time, right? Just pop them in when you're driving. I have a CD by Larry King, the talk
Larry
show
King
host,
Live?
Larry
Yeah,
King Live.
sure.
And his tape is how to have a conversation with anybody, anytime, anywhere.
I've never really met a stranger. That sounds right up my
Right.
alley.
And what he says is that if you want to start a conversation with anybody, anytime, anywhere, all you have to do is ask them something about themselves.
Right.
That's it.
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
and if you say to somebody, I remember I was downtown one day on lunch from work. A woman came up to me. I was in the fast food joint. She comes up to me and she says, "Wow, those are some really nice shoes. Where'd you get those shoes?"
I was going to mention that to both of you today.
And I'm like, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, these shoes, I got them over here, But after we talk for a moment, all of a sudden she says, yeah, and I do this.
gears.
I have this product that I'm working on. So
Now
she goes
you're engaged
into
in her world.
Right. I'm already engaged.
You involved
So
her.
now I'm thinking she's giving me. Now maybe she did like my shoes, maybe she didn't. But that's not the point. The point is that she knew enough to say something about me,
Right.
which got me into the
That
conversation.
reminds me
Right,
of what
right.
Gwendolyn was saying earlier
Yes.
about turning it back on the person.
Right.
You should. You should turn it back on the person to give them that opportunity to become engaged in the conversation.
Right, and that goes
Makes
to
a
your
big
point in
difference.
terms of getting mentors.
Right.
You can engage those people. You can get a mentor if you know how to approach that person. Most people do want to talk about what they do.
Right.
If somebody is an artist, if somebody is an engineer, if somebody is a doctor, an accountant, they want to talk about what they do. We all want to talk about
No
what
one
Yeah,
listens to
yeah,
them at
yeah.
home anyway.
And there's no such
That's
thing.
right. No one listens to us at
There's
home.
no such thing as a dull person.
That's right.
Honestly, once you get to talking to people, their lives are probably more exciting than your own.
I'm not trading
Especially if they
shoes.
have troubles, because trouble makes for novel situations. And I love talking to strangers, people I've not known, people who don't fit the genre of what you think they should be. You get to know someone that you will never meet in a book, or you'll never meet unless you just bump into them. No such thing as a dull person.
You'd
in
be
the world.
amazed at who
No
told
such
me
thing.
about that 48 Laws of Power book.
Now, okay, on our success bucket list, they're reading. They've got a
Reading.
mentor. They're talking. They've got goals. Okay, now
right.
they've got to launch.
Keep 'em
How do
diverse.
they
How do
launch?
they get it into
How
the
do they
world?
launch? They've got to launch now.
Okay,
That
okay.
reminds me of what you
okay.
said earlier.
Let me put a quote out that it came to
Okay.
me one time out of meditation, talking about greatness. It says, there's something within you, greater than you, that compels you to be greater than what you are. Accept the challenge, heed the call, rise. So, to me, it's about listening inwardly, because there's no such thing as a person who does not have something in them pushing them. From my perspective, it's just your God force. It's your power. It's your life. It's the motivation in you that makes you who you are. And so if there's something within you greater than you that is compelling you to be greater than what you are, then you should accept the challenge to outdo the last best of you and then rise from there. So it begins with an inner feeling. And it's never, ever absent if you can tap into it.
Stephanie, you said earlier that a lot of times you don't hear the naysayers because you're so busy doing. You know, sometimes you can analyze, you can analyze, but you got to get up and you got to put yourself into motion and apply.
But what motivates you to do that, Stephanie, is my question. It's got to be an inside job. I'm telling you, there's something in you.
Okay, okay.
G-O-D, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
It's a fire.
You know, I love people who can identify what that thing is. I really do.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that thing is, okay?
The driving force.
I just know that it happens literally like this. I'd like to do that. Or that's interesting. Or I want to know more about that. So it doesn't come, for the viewers at home, it doesn't come like something's over your bed, or Archangel Michael hovering over your bed,
It's not
right?
gonna smack you.
And there's no burning bushes for me, and nobody's gonna grab you and pick you. They don't do for me anyway, okay? I don't meditate, even though I wish I could. You know, I don't do, none of that happens to me, okay? It literally comes as something that says, I'd like to know more about that, or I'm interested in that, or God.
Well, you know what? You
have to recognize that thing when you get it.
But when you heard yourself, pardon me, being a minister, I gotta say this, I call it God.
Okay,
I really do.
all right.
I call it God. The Spirit indwelling moves everyone.
Moves you. Everyone has that. Everybody, everyone has that.
Yeah.
Okay? And in some people, and I had to do this, I had to get over the idea that it was going to appear in the form of a burning bush. Okay.
You had
Metaphor.
I had to get,
Had to believe
I had
you.
to
Okay.
stop
You had to switch it
expecting
up.
a Cicely B. DeMille production.
Right,
okay?
right,
Because
right.
that's what I was looking for. Okay.
Yeah.
But to me, it was just Tuesday, and on Tuesday there was this list of things to do. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would get through those things, and I would do that, and then it was Wednesday, and then it was next year, and then it still happens. Oh, I'm interested in that. Oh, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to do this.
It's a habit.
And you just do it. So I guess there's something in there whispering, go do this. Because if I don't do it, I feel
Off.
I feel
Out of tune.
Yeah.
Well, you bring
Out
up
of
the word.
source.
You bring up the word habit, and I think that's what we have to do. We have to get in a habit of doing. If we can get ourselves into a habit of doing, people who do things, you will notice those people always are doing things.
Yeah.
The people who are not doing things are always not doing things.
Habits.
Right.
So we've got to get into a
And that's
habit
what they're
of
doing,
doing.
though.
Right.
In order to get into a habit, and I'm going to go back to Zig Ziglar one last time.
Okay.
Bring them up.
Zig Ziglar said that, I probably should pay Zig Ziglar, right?
No, he should pay you.
Well, Zig Ziglar said that it takes 21 days
Hey,
to
to
form
To
a
form a
habit.
habit. That's right.
We all
And
know that.
if you want
Daddy told
to
me.
do something, you go and you do it. But don't look down. Now, Martin Luther King said this. Martin Luther King said that he was talking about education and people saying that I don't want to go to school because it takes too long. It'll take me 4 years, take me 5 years. And Martin Luther King said, don't think about how long it's going to take. Don't let that stop you from getting an education because the time is going to pass anyhow.
Anyway.
So,
Yeah, it's how you
it doesn't
use
matter.
it.
If you're here today and this is 4 years from now, if you start school today,
In
4
4
years from now,
years,
you'll
it'll
be
be
done with school. If you
Yeah.
don't
Right.
start school from now, 4 years is still going to
4
come.
years is
Right,
gonna
right.
It's
pass.
still
Now,
going to pass.
I get that complaint. People say, well, it's going to take 4 years. So I say, so are you planning your transition in 4 years?
Because what are you going to do?
Yeah,
And
what
they
are
say,
you
no.
gonna do
I
in the
says, okay,
meantime?
so since you're
You know.
not planning to be dead in 4 years,
Why not?
why not?
Do some work.
Do some work. Do something.
Here's a funny question. Where did Zig get 21 days from? I mean, I've heard that for many, many years. And of course, as I began to work with making things happen for myself, some of them happen in 21 hours.
21 is
So,
the number of completion.
Right. But he's
that's
talking about a
metaphoric
habit.
to me.
Well, and that's possible. Maybe it is
Yeah.
a metaphor. I'm not sure. But the point is well taken.
Right.
And the point is this, is that if you're going to do something, and you mentioned lifting weights earlier and how become stronger as
Have
you
to
lift
pattern
weights.
it.
So even if you use that as an example, today, if I go and start lifting weights, it's going to be extremely difficult for me to do the 20 minutes, 30 minutes. but tomorrow it's going to be a little bit easier.
Yeah,
And then the next day
yeah,
it's
and
gonna
you
be
build
easier.
upon it
And you
as you
build
go.
upon it.
And that's what happens. So the 21-day reference is very good reference, because the more you do the thing that it is that you're trying to do,
Yeah.
the easier it becomes. And
Sure.
if you continue to do that thing for 21 days,
21,
then you're more
21.
likely to be able to develop a good habit
21
Yeah.
for
than if
me,
you don't.
that
And you might need
number-
another 21.
That
but
number for me, it can be
Yeah.
divided by 7
Sure.
3 times, and 3 is a
3 times 7 is
trinity,
21.
and 3 is a completion, and 7 is a completion,
Right.
and 21 you just keep going. It's
keep
like
going,
you know,
yeah.
on a track.
There's a
you
deep,
gotta keep
deep
going.
meaning
Right.
in back of all of that. It
These
really is.
minds, they come together. They make sense to completion.
But first, there's an important key to doing. I do want people to launch. There's one important
off,
thing,
yeah.
is you have got to first see it as possible for you to do.
Yes, you
Okay,
must.
for yourself. Can't be something somebody wants for you. It can't be something somebody told you. You have got to, at least for yourself, see it as possible. Maybe you don't believe it all the way right now, but you've got to sort of see yourself as possible.
See it
Right,
as
See
a
it
right,
as-
right.
And then get started. Do something.
And
Make a
let-
list.
let-
Do
let me-
something. Get
Let me
something.
add something to
Okay.
that. Another pop phrase came into my head. Begin the way you intend to end, then live in the end until you win.
Hey,
Right.
You must
I
have
like
that
that
picture
one.
already in mind.
Right.
You must be in the now state, in the future state. The future state is always in the future. The now state creates the future. So begin the way you intend to end and live in the end until you win.
And
You live by
envision
that,
it.
you'll launch off
Right.
every time.
So
you really will.
today, you've got to do something. You make a list
Every day.
of
Every day.
what you can do right where you are with what you have right now.
Yes. yes.
Example, we talked about reading. You may be in an environment where there aren't books. It may not even be magazines. But I'm serious, there's bottles of things. There's lotion, there's medicine, there's
Right.
things.
Get it going.
Just get started
Get
where
started,
you are
right,
right now.
right.
And every day, do something toward the realization of
that
that
dream,
goal
that
every
goal.
day. Understanding that your energy is going to be different every day. So today you may be able to do 11 things. Because my to-do
Right.
list are usually 22 things deep, right? But maybe you're having a 2 to-do list today,
Right,
right?
today.
Do
Right.
2 things. But do something every single day.
That old question.
And you will be surprised that
How
at
much?
a
Yeah.
21-day period,
much has been
you
How
will
much you
be
get done.
amazed at
And-
how much you have completed.
You know when they say, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a
One
time.
bite at a time. Big elephant, but keep chipping away on that bad boy. Before you know it, you've achieved your goal.
But it's done.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that, are we out of time?
No, we're not. We got time.
Oh, okay. I think that, if you are going to do things, if you're going to achieve things, then one word of caution, I suppose, that I would have, and that is don't look so far into the future. If you want to do
That's
something.
right. I
Yeah.
gotta say that.
Yeah, just do
Small
it.
bite.
Just do it now.
Yeah.
I read a book called My Life as a Furry Red Monster, and the book was by the guy who does the Elmo character on Sesame Street.
Really?
I've heard of that.
And yeah, the guy's name is Kevin Clash. He's a 6'2", 200-pound black man.
The man behind the
And he
elbow.
does Elmo, which was very strange, which is what made me pick the
Ironic,
book up in the
actually.
first place. Yeah, it
Yes.
is ironic. Because when I picked this, I saw the book and I saw this picture of this big black guy and this little furry, thing that
Yeah,
talks
yeah.
with this high squeaky voice. And I was like, this cannot be
The
that
one that's
guy.
doing that, right, right.
But it is.
Formlessness.
But it was a great book. He told his story. But in any case, the point is that one of the things that he said as he gave lessons from Elmo is that Elmo is a 3-year-old, his age is right around 3 years old or somewhere around there, perpetually. So in any case, one of the lessons that Elmo can teach us is to live in the moment.
Yeah.
And that is whatever is happening right now, do the thing now.
Yeah, yeah.
Enjoy the thing now instead of worrying about what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's one of the problems with adults is
Yeah.
we think about tomorrow or the next day or
We lose
or
that
whatever.
childlike intuition that possesses a baby to cry when they're wet or make a noise when they're breathe. It's the intuition, and God would tell you to have a childlike faith.
Childlike faith. And
and I think if you do that, I think if you think along those lines, it's going to be easier to make the move. It's going to be easier to do whatever it is that you want to do. Because most things, it's true, we've all got to admit, most things are hard. They take time.
Don't assume life is going to be easy.
Right, they take time, they take effort, they take energy. Resources, but if we think about all of those things, we will never do anything.
I'm just going to sleep no, I don't want to. Never mind.
That's
right.
So I think the lesson from Elmo is good, and that is think about right now. If you want to write a book, what do you do? Well, the first thing is write the first page. Write the first sentence. So think of the title, and that could be your goal. My goal for today could be to think of my title of the book, think of my concept, and maybe to not write anything, and then my goal could be, so you set aside some time to do
all the time.
something. And if you're doing that, and I think you can get where you want to be.
Now, Stephanie, at the very beginning of the program, you spoke of thoughts and feelings and actions. It boils down to me that we're constantly creating because we're always thinking, we're always feeling, so we're always creating. The question is, how are you going to use that creativity in a positive, constructive way or in some negative way? So choose a goal, it gives you a point of reference, something to shoot for. Now gather the thoughts and the feelings around it. Now, you could say take action, but if your thoughts and feelings are not focused on that, your actions will not make it happen. So get that inside job done before you start working on that outside job.
And that's
what
excellent.
I believe.
Hello.
I like that point, and I will add to that if we are going to do things, motivate. And I'm going to go back to my, since I've been talking about Zig Ziglar the whole show, I may as well go back to it one more time.
We're coming to the end of the show now.
And I read so many books.
I have read a lot of Zig Ziglar. I probably
listened to every tape this guy ever
made. Did he
made.
tell you to say this evening?
No, he
didn't. I probably listened to every tape. And Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Lee Iacocca, a lot of these guys I listened to. But in any case, another thing that he said is that motivation. He was talking about motivation, and he was trying to give people an idea of how people were asking him questions. How do I get motivated? How do I do this? How do I get motivated to lose the weight? How do I get motivated to stop smoking? How do I get motivated to ride my bicycle? Well, what he says, and I think that's a great point. But the thing that Zig Ziglar said is that motivation follows doing. There's something inside of us, in our brain, called endorphins that start to pop off as we go. Same thing. It's the same thing that you get when you get high from drugs.
Okay, with that, we hate to end this on when you get high from drugs.
But anyway.
That is not what we want you to take away from this show tonight. But we're coming to the end of our time. I want to thank you guys for joining me at home. It's been a great show. I want you to remember to read something, to get a mentor, to figure out how to get rid of those toxic people, and I want you to get a goal. Something absolutely every day towards your goal. Remember, stay in the moment and appreciate all of the goodness that life has for you right here. Don't look too far ahead because you'll miss the miracle, which is you. This is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman. I'm the host of tonight's show, A Sip of Inspiration. Remember, dream big.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Now the trees sang a song to me. He said the birds sang it to the breeze. Just in case I was feeling down and didn't really want to be around. He said the breeze sometimes come with rain, but nothing in life stays the same. Tomorrow's gonna bring a change. The message remains the same.